Hello everybody, good to be working with you all today. My name is Jean Woollard. I'm an associate of the Leadership Foundation for Higher Education. I've been working with the foundation for the last couple of years now, based on many years of experience of working as a consultant in universities, really working on issues of leadership, change, training and development. I'm going to be talking to you now about motivating people, how to get the very best out of the people that you work with and people who work for you and your colleagues generally in the organisation. And one of the things that people often ask is, why should we be bothered about motivation? What does it matter if people like what they do and feel engaged at work? Well, recently there was a poll conducted by Gallup which looked across the world at employee engagement. And one of the things they found was, quite startlingly, 50% of the people interviewed were actually not feeling engaged at work. And out of that 50%, actively 20% of them were actively disengaged, meaning that they were not just passively not doing their best at work, but actually aggravating situations and making things very difficult for their colleagues and for their managers. So my thoughts about engagement and motivation are that it's a very costly thing for people not to be motivated at work. It's costly in terms of actual money, it costs the organisation money, and it costs our local economies and national economies a lot of money. But it's very costly in terms of human potential. And I know that you as educators would be interested in people really achieving their best and giving of their best at work. While I'm speaking to you in this session, I'd like you to be thinking about what motivates you. Because I believe that if we understand our own motivation, it can really help us be more curious about what other people are motivated by. And I think this is a clue to really getting the best out of people. So be thinking as I speak about when you felt most motivated or least motivated at work, and what were the circumstances of that, and what were the outcomes for you and your organisation. There have been many theories over the years about what motivates people and how people are best motivated at work. And one of the most famous of these is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. But you may have also come across the work of Hertzberg, who talked about hygiene factors versus motivators, and McGregor's XY theory, right up to Charles Handy's motivation calculus. However, most of these stem from the work of Abraham Maslow, and then they've been sort of refined over the time. So I'm going to say a little bit more about his work. So Maslow's theory was a hierarchy of needs, of human needs, and I think we'll all recognise many of these as I talk you through them. At the very base of his pyramid, he talks about physiological needs. And these are the basic survival needs that we all have as human beings: food and water and shelter and warmth. And basically what Maslow's saying is, until we have those base needs satisfied, we can't really move up the hierarchy. The next level up is around safety. And this can be seen in terms of people having more stability or security. And you could think about how this would apply in a workplace. So once your very basic needs for earning sufficient money to survive in today's world are satisfied, then you can move up the scale a bit, and you might then be concerned about, is this job secure? And what's the potential here for me being made redundant perhaps, or perhaps failing at work and being dismissed? So you can see that the safety needs would kick in pretty soon after the very basic needs to earn a living. Further up the scale from there, Maslow talks about the needs to belong, We all need to feel that we're cared for and that we're part of a group. We're social animals, he would say. So we need to feel that we've got friends around us, people who care about us. He goes as far as to say people who love us. And you can see in organisational terms that people do have a need to be part of a team, to be part of a group where they feel it's a bit like a family, that they belong to something that's larger than themselves. And that also supports them as well as gives them opportunity to grow and develop. Further up the scale from there, he talks about our need for esteem. And what he means by that is our need to feel that we've achieved in life, in our chosen profession, or in our world that we operate in, to be respected, to achieve mastery at the task or the role or the work that we're doing, and to develop a good reputation as someone that can be relied upon or is good at what they do. Now, the highest level in the hierarchy is one that he calls self-actualization. And most people might say in their jobs that they don't achieve this. But Maslow says to get the very best out of people, you have to give them an opportunity to experience all of these levels of belonging, of feeling safe and feeling secure. But the most important is probably a real sense of inner fulfillment. And that's when we feel that we're doing something that is connected with our own values in such a way that we have a real sense of purpose about what we do. And that our own unique contribution, that special thing that only you and I and all of us can bring to an organisation or to the groups that we belong to, is satisfied and is useful. And when we feel that, Maslow says that's when we're really giving of our best, because then we're so highly motivated that we will do this very thing, whether or not we get paid for it, and whether or not we feel that we are going to satisfy a lot of those other needs lower down the ladder. If we feel that we're doing something that's really important for us and our own development, we give of our best. So moving on from the work of Maslow, but building upon it, the social scientist Daniel Pink has done some work which looks at what he calls I-type behaviour and E-type behaviour, which is the I stands for intrinsic, so intrinsic motivation, and E-type behaviour, extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic he defines as factors external to the individual and unrelated to the task. So these could be motivators a bit like the ones in Maslow's, lower down Maslow's hierarchy, which are about those kind of very basic needs that we have met by working. So, are we earning enough? Do we get a nice company car? Do we get any foreign travel associated with our work? They're not directly related to the pleasure of doing the task or the enjoyment of a job well done. They are related to our employment. The intrinsic motivators, however, are about that internal desire to perform a particular task and to perform it well. And Daniel Pink says that these are the ones that are underutilised in today's organisations, and that leaders need to tap into these more to get the very best out of people. Many of us think that reward and punishment, or carrot and stick as it's sometimes called, is the way to motivate people. But actually, if you think about it, it doesn't work very well, not in the long run. I think what it does is it often creates a dependency culture where people do things that they think their manager wants them to do, but they do it half-heartedly. They're not really committed to it. And they can often cover up the things that they think their manager would be disappointed in. And this can lead to, I think, diminishing performance in the long run. It can actually crush our creativity, and it can replace good behaviour with slightly unethical behaviour in some circumstances. And so I think actually in the longer term, we really want to encourage people to think for themselves and to be self-motivated. And this is why we need to help them tap into those intrinsic motivators. So Daniel Pink talks about 3 elements that we need to be aware of when we're thinking about intrinsic motivation. The first one is autonomy. He talks about having a sense of control over what, when, how and with whom you work. Now I know in reality, as you do, that many of us at work don't have complete control. Most of us don't have complete control over exactly what we do and when we do it and who we do it with. But what Pink is saying is that the more we can give people a chance to make those decisions for themselves, the better. Because I know, as a person working for myself for many years as a freelance worker, that that's one of the key things that motivates me in my work, that I have quite a high degree of control over the work that I do, when I do it, and the people that I work with. The second of his 3 intrinsic motivators is mastery, and we've referred to this before talking about Maslow, if you remember earlier, as one of his higher levels of needs that all human beings have. And Daniel Pink talks about this as the desire to get better and better at something that really matters to you. And you can see this in people that, for example, classical musicians who practice incredibly long hours every day to be able to play their instrument as well as they possibly can. But it's not just people who are talented in that way. I think most of us feel that if a job's worth doing, we want to do it well. And we really enjoy doing things well. Hobbies and activities out of work, we will work on until we get really good at them, sports activities, etc. And wouldn't it be great if we could tap into that sense of mastery in the workplace so that people are motivated to do their very best every day in the work that they do? The third one of these motivators he talks about is purpose, i.e. knowing how your own contribution serves something larger than yourself. And I think as a leader and as a manager, we have a responsibility to enable the people who work with us to see how the day-to-day work that they do fits into the bigger picture. Because sometimes it's very demotivating to be doing repetitive, sometimes quite dreary tasks that all of us have to do as part of our work. But if we know that the reason we're doing some of these things, that it's necessary to actually create something that's going to be better for most people in the organisation or serve our customers better, in your cases, your students better, I think that gives us a sense of purpose and meaning to even the most mundane work tasks. I call it the 4 C's model. It's about competence, confidence, commitment and context. Competence obviously refers to our ability to do the job. Do we have the skills and the knowledge we need in order to be able to do the job? But sometimes we have the skills and knowledge, but we may not feel confident for one reason or another. It may be that we're newly promoted and on paper we have the skills and knowledge, but we maybe don't have a sense of our own ability to do it, and that's a different thing altogether. Or something may have knocked our confidence recently, and that could be to do with the individual context, our own life outside of work. Perhaps something's happened that's made us feel less than confident, or something in the workplace itself that has made us feel that we are not quite as good as we thought we were. And then the other circle is commitment. You've probably met people, as I'm sure I have in my working life, who can do the job. They know how to do it. They're quite confident people, but actually they're not committed for one reason or another. It could be that they don't believe in it, they don't believe in the values of the organisation, they've got other things on their mind that are more important to them, again to do with their individual context, or somehow they've lost their commitment. Maybe they went for a job they didn't get and they felt demotivated by that. So people's commitment can go up and down, as can their confidence. And also we have, apart from individual context, we have organisational context, which is changing all the time. We know that We're all affected by what goes on in higher education, in your country and abroad, and what our students are looking for is changing all the time, and people are becoming more demanding in their educational requirements, etc., etc. And so all this is going to impact on individual performance and team performance. But what this model helps me do as a manager is identify where I need to put attention to the issue. So if I see someone underperforming, I can think about what kind of underperformance is it. If they really don't know the job well, they're new to the job perhaps and haven't had the experience, perhaps I need to provide them with training, coaching. Or do I need to challenge them in their commitment? Do I need to give them some feedback on how I see them coming across at work? And do I need to provide support and challenge to them in their work? By delegating, perhaps, giving them something that will stretch them and provide them with new energy. Delegation is something I'd like to give a little bit more attention to because I think it's often underused as a developmental tool for people in organisations. I think often as managers and leaders we're reluctant to delegate, probably because of our own high standards and our feeling that really people can't do our job as well as we can. That sometimes holds us back. Also fear that they're going to do it wrong, in our view, and we'll get the blame. And I have a definition of delegation that I'd like to share with you. And that is delegation empowers a subordinate, someone who works for you, to make decisions. So it's about a shift of decision-making authority from one organisational level, your level, to one lower down, someone who works for you. And if properly done, it's not abdicating. It's not you abdicating your responsibility as a manager. You still have to retain that. But it is a great opportunity to develop and to motivate your staff. So I want to encourage you to think about delegation in a different way. And what I mean by that is that delegation is not a simple act. It's not one act. It's a process of a number of different activities. And this slide illustrates that. So we're talking about a stage 6 process. And I've highlighted, you can see in red, stages 1 and stages 4 because I think they're particularly crucial. So I'll give you an overview and then I'll talk a bit more about stages 1 and 4. Stage 1 is preparation and gaining commitment. So preparing to delegate for you and preparing the person that you're delegating to. And also gaining their commitment, which I think is a different thing. That's about their motivation to do the job. Stage 2 is about offering any training that might be necessary, and that may not be necessary in every case. Stage 3 is about coaching. Again, depending how much or how little you need to give will depend on the experience of the person concerned that you're delegating to. And stage 4 is a crucial one for you again because it's about you letting go. Because up until that point, the job is still yours. But after stage 4, the job becomes their job. And that's where I think a lot of managers fail to really delegate. We think we've given the job away to someone, but actually we've not. We're still holding it to ourselves. Emotionally, we're very connected with it. And therefore, we're not giving the person a chance to really learn how to do it their way and to take responsibility. And that can be very demotivating for people. Stage 6, then, is reporting back by exception. Because if you've done the letting go process well and you've developed people to that point, they'll be ready to report back to you if and when they need your help. So let's talk a little bit more about stage 1 because I think this is such an important stage for all parties. This is about, as I said, preparing and gaining commitment. And this is where, even before you meet with the person that you're going to delegate to, you need to decide on the work that needs to be done, and who's the best person to do it. And looking around in your team, you may say, well, I'll give it to someone who I know I can trust, who's already done this work. But ask yourself the question, what would really stretch the person that you want to motivate? Should you be giving it to someone who hasn't already done the task, but you think has the potential? Because this is about potential, and potential, stretching people to really achieve their potential can be hugely motivating for them. Then you'll meet with the person and introduce the assignment to them, the what, the why, and why it needs to be done, why it's important. And with them, agree objectives of the task and expected outcomes. So you need to talk about what you're looking to achieve through this task and what you expect out of as a result of doing this job. Then they'd want to clarify deadlines and progress reviews required, because you're not dumping this work on people. You've got to be there as you would with someone. If you're a parent, you'll know this, with someone a child that you're developing. You wouldn't just, if you were helping them to learn to swim, you wouldn't just throw them in the deep end and let them sink or swim, would you? You'd be actually concerned. You'd stand on the side of the pool and you'd give them encouragement, and you'd be ready to jump in if things got dangerous. So when you're thinking about delegating, you need to be keeping a good eye on how you can support the person through the process, because they'll be learning as they do the job. You also need in this first meeting, though, to establish limits, because people need to know what's the scope of this project or this task, what's the authority level that they have, and what resources do they have? Can they bring in other staff? Can they talk to people on other teams? And what's the time scale? Most importantly, what's the deadline? So in addition to those things that we've talked about in this first meeting, you also want to ask them for their initial thoughts and how they'd approach the task. Now, sometimes you might be delegating to someone who's quite experienced, so it's a really good idea to try to draw out of them what their thoughts are. They may have some knowledge and understanding of the situation that you, even as the leader, are not aware of, and they may have some very good ideas. And I think also that's another part of motivating people, isn't it? Giving people the opportunity to really share in, as we said before, to have some autonomy in how they do the task and how they approach it. Part of that will be helping them think about their own development needs. What do they need? And your judgment, are they looking confident or not? Do I need to coach this person more? Do they need some training? And do I just need to really be very hands-off and let them get on with it until they need my help? And this is a judgment call based on your own understanding of them and how experienced you think they are. But also I think it's important here to draw out people's reservations, because people will have concerns when they're taking over somebody else's work, and their boss's work usually. It's quite a concern to do it as well as is expected of them. Or they might have concerns about taking on more work than if they already have a heavy workload. So you might need to help them try to think about how to overcome some of their concerns. And you can do this through coaching. So at the end of this meeting, you'd have agreed a plan, and in that plan you will have included some checkpoints and the support that they require, and you've talked about your and their expectations. And after each of those above steps that we've talked about, I think you need to really check that they've understood fully what's expected of them. So what I would tend to do in that situation is ask the person to summarise for me what they think they've been asked to do, how they're going to approach it, what they need, and what their expectations are in terms of the support they're going to get from me, and make sure we're on the same page. So now we come to the next crucial stage, the letting go stage. So take it that the job's been going quite well, you've done a bit of training with the person you've delegated the job to, you've coached them a bit. Now you think now is the time to really let go and let them run with it. So what are some of the challenges of letting go? And these are more challenges for you often as a manager, I think, than for the person who's taken on the job. So part of letting go, I think, to reassure yourself as much as them, is checking that they have everything that they need to enable them to get on with the task. Fully now, autonomously really, pretty much without too much guidance from you. And you may need to probe at this stage too, to find out whether they have any worries or concerns, things that are still bothering them, and things that they wouldn't have known at the beginning, but now they're into the job, will have understood a little bit more, what it entails, and therefore what might be getting in their way. And this could be things like not being able to get access to the right people that they need to talk to in other teams, that sort of organisational issue that perhaps you can facilitate and help them with. You need to also share with them very honestly any fears or any concerns you have about the standard of work that they're doing or how they're going about things. This is an opportunity to give feedback. And I think a mixture of affirmative feedback, and what I mean by that is, giving people the encouraging feedback that says what they're already doing well, but also that developmental feedback, which is crucial in motivating people and helping them learn, which is about saying how you think they could do it better and what you think they need to do differently, if anything. And then when you're satisfied and they are satisfied, that you feel that they have the confidence and the commitment and the capability to continue, then I think you give them the responsibility and the authority to do the job. And part of that is actually advising other colleagues in the organisation that this is no longer your job, but it is their job. And that can be a really important stage, because I think if people feel that their manager is still hovering in the background and dealing with the people that they should be dealing with directly, it undermines their confidence and it can undermine their sense of their own motivation. In summary, we've talked about a number of things to do with motivation, perhaps most importantly, that it really matters, that it is a terrible waste in terms of human potential, as well as costly for the organisation that we work in and also for the economy that we're in, to actually waste all that talent and potential that is there in our organisations that's waiting to be tapped into. We've also looked at different theories of motivation, and nearly all of the classic theories, including Daniel Pink's most recent theories, really stress the importance of intrinsic motivation, the desire internally to do a really good job, the self-motivators, rather than the extrinsic or hygiene factors that just keep us into survival. We want people to actually move into a higher level of commitment, and that's where your role comes in as manager, in helping people tap in to those things that make them truly motivated. And part of that is understanding what motivates you and your people better. And there are many ways in which you can do this. Just getting to know people, learning about the way they work, having conversations with them about what they really care about in terms of their work. These are all important things. But there are also tools that you can use, 360 feedback. You can use personality profiles that can help you understand what drives people. And we're all different, and we will all have things that are important to us uniquely. So finding out more about what makes people tick in the team that you work in will make a big difference to motivating your people. And then finally, we've talked about delegation as one of the key development opportunities that you can offer people in your team, but also something that can be hugely motivating if done in the right way. So not as an abdication of your own work or your own role, but as something that can really engage the people that you work in by giving them something that's challenging and that's stretching and that they find developmental.